Welcome to The Way Left. This podcast is named AI as in artificial intelligence. Are we there yet? So I want to reference some books that are on my website, on our website, thewayleft.com. Some books that will be good for this podcast in particular. And those are under recommendations. What are you reading? So 3 books I have out there. I also reference some other books in this podcast that are not posted out there. Lots of books that could be out there. I put a few out there. So the 3 books on the website that I think reference to this podcast. Jonathan Haidt wrote a book called The Anxious Generation. It's basically about social media, what it's doing to kids, how it's making them anxious. Great book. Jonathan Haidt has a lot of good books. There's a second book on there Jonathan Haidt has written in coordination with Greg Lukianoff from FIRE, Free Speech Advocate. And it's The Coddling of American. And that's also a really good book that you can reference, not necessarily for as relevant to AI. Nick Bostrom wrote Superintelligence, which is about super AGI, artificial general intelligence, and what that would mean. The things that could be good and the things that could be bad about it. And we'll talk about that in today's podcast. And the third book that's out there is by Yuval Noah Harari. Called Nexus. It's about information networks from the Stone Age to current AI. Really interesting book. Great writer. If you haven't heard of him, look him up. He also has other books that I have out there on the site, but Yuval Noah Harari, Nexus. So those are the 3 books that you would want to reference on what are you reading under recommendations on the website, The Way Left. Okay. So AI, artificial intelligence. I'm not going to sit here and say that I am an expert on artificial intelligence or technology. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, including Nick Bostrom's, Stuart Russell's, a lot of things on consciousness and can AI become conscious, and just the theory behind the history and the theory behind computers, artificial intelligence. The reason I want to bring it up and have a podcast about it is seems like it's in the news every day. People are confused. What is an LLM? What is, data scraping? What is true AGI, artificial general intelligence versus super AGI, super artificial general intelligence? What does it mean? Are all our jobs going away? Is this the end of the world? Are we back to the Terminator and Skynet? Things of that nature. I think it's a good reference to that. I'll talk about the people. So this is kind of a historical content, my thoughts on it, what's currently happening. Again, if you are a hardcore engineer, AI engineer, or hardcore technology, nothing new is going to come out of here other than maybe some theories and some background and some history. So let's kick it off. So we have these terms. We have AI, which is artificial intelligence. We have AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And then we have super intelligence. So artificial general intelligence would be about above human intelligence, specifically to one individual. Whereas super AGI would be surpasses all of humanity's intelligence all in one. AI is a little bit more narrow. Think of LLMs, large language models, kind of like ChatGPT. Is that necessarily smarter than an individual? Not necessarily speaking. And there's other terms out there like artificial narrow intelligence, which I think we can equate to think of ChatGPT or Anthropic or Gemini or Copilot, artificial narrow intelligence, ANI, designed to perform specific tasks. Artificial general intelligence, AGI, can behave in a human-like way across all tasks. So very intelligent, as smart as like any individual human. Artificial superintelligence, some coin it as ASI or super AGI, smarter than humans. And the quote here is the stuff of sci-fi. That leads us into some descriptions when I said LLM. So an LLM is a large language model. It's a language model trained with self-supervised machine learning on a vast amount of text. So think of ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. So that's what it's doing. It's going out and reading all this text from the internet, from books, from papers, everything, and putting sequences in to prompt it for responses. They call pieces of data tokens, so it might be 3 letters. It's not necessarily every individual letter. They consist of billions to trillions of parameters and operate as a general purpose sequence models, generating, summarizing, translating, and reasoning over text. Again, if you haven't used ChatGPT, you'll kind of understand that language. They can enable capabilities like conversational agents, code generation, knowledge retrieval, and automated reasoning that previously required custom or bespoke systems. So that is an LLM. That is your narrow intelligence. That is your AI, if you will. Okay, so how do they get this data, right? How do we get the data that OpenAI needs? They get it from one of the methods is data scraping. It's an automated process of extracting information from various sources, primarily websites, to convert unstructured data in a structured format for analysis and use. It's automated extraction of data. So the methods of data scraping sounds pretty ominous, and I will speak to some of this later on. Is it ominous? Is it bad? There are some goods and bads about it, and who's getting that data. Again, I will speak to this later in the podcast. Web scraping is a method of data scraping. So data scraping, it's going out and extracting data from websites, typically involves fetching the HTML content, the hypertext markup language. Screen scraping, extracting data from the user interface of applications, which may not be web-based. Gather from software, API data extraction, application programming interfaces. Some websites offer APIs that allow users to access data in a structured format. This is often the preferred method, as it is more reliable and compliant with the website's terms of services. They have tools for data scraping. I'm not going to go too heavy into that. The point is that to understand data scraping is an accumulation of data that you can then use in your large language model to produce these generative type of artificial narrow intelligence, the ANIs, the AIs, the chat GPTs, the Geminis, things like that. Now, you can use data scraping for market research. You could look to track prices. So think about this is kind of like a research database. Hey, we want to put all this stuff in, and then we want to be able to look at it and parse that data. You can also do content aggregation. Data scraping can be used to gather articles, put everything together, and then can write code around this so that we can produce results such as the LLMs that are being used, again, by ChatGPT, the most common one referred to, and I'll refer to that later. So one of the issues with data scraping, and so we're going to go into pluses and minuses in this, and we're going to talk. I'm going to define terms. I'm also going to elaborate on the considerations that come into place and some of the ethical considerations. And I'll define morals and ethics later when we talk about alignment and control of AI. So the ethical implications are you checking the website's terms of service to ensure compliance? Some websites prohibit scraping. So it's a valuable technique, but are you doing it legally? So some would argue that in a lot of cases, it's just taking stuff and using proprietary, copyrighted or trademarked information and using it freely and reselling it. So there are some questions around that. So back to the point about LLMs and we talk about leading models. Today's leading models are Claude 4, Grok 3, which would be X. Claude would be, I think, related to Google. You got ChatGPT. You got Llama, which is Meta or Facebook. Gemini and DeepSeek. Now, DeepSeek was out of China, and they have a lot of other models out there. And DeepSeek, there was some questions about their integrity or ethics because it looked like they were just taking ChatGPT results and using that as interpretation to produce their results. Whether or not that's true, the point is everybody's kind of taken from everybody, including from the public and private. Claude 4 is the leads in coding and software engineering. This is generically based on some benchmarks. Grok 3, real-time information access and mathematical reasoning. Of course, he has, 2 to 300 million users that he can scrape from X/Twitter. GPT models, strong general purpose. This is your ChatGPT capabilities with improved reasoning. Llama 4, multimodal tasks with its open source. So open source versus closed. Open source is that you can see how the models are built, getting some coding so that people can build upon that. Gemini 2.5, video understanding and long context processing. DeepSeek disrupted the market with comparable performance at a fraction of the cost. So a couple things about China. China is heavily invested in their model is basically the government funds a multitude of companies to go at it and see who comes out as the result. So they are government funded initially. So let's say they fund 25 DeepSeeks, different names, and then the DeepSeek model wins or initially wins, then it's going to get more and it's going to go public or at least get private money involved in that. One of the considerations is power. How do we power these things? Because they're running computers, they're running networks, they're running all these GPUs, they're running all, you've heard about the NVIDIA chips. China is a leader in alternative energies such as solar, wind, hydro, so they have access to cheaper energy. So what it takes to do it. And this is why people want to build data warehouses now and build small nuclear power plants to power all this logic and all this computation to be able to produce faster results. So China is leading in that front, especially on energy sector. Okay, social media. So I don't call most media, I don't call Facebook, Instagram, X, any of that. It's not really social media, it's anti-social media. What I mean by that is the algorithm, we all believe, is not to, it's to push, and I'm going to define what an algorithm is. It's to push what's really heightened. So, for example, they don't put teachers on the cover of Time. They put leaders, military leaders. Generally speaking, you don't look at the good story about the teacher that taught a good math class. What you do is you look at the shooting that happened at, and rightfully so in that case. You look at the shooting and that gets more clicks. So what are we pushing? Are we pushing the real news or are we pushing, and I don't even want to go into misinformation or fake news. Those words may or not be meaningful. Pushing what you really need to see or what they just gets more clicks. So an algorithm is a finite sequence of well-defined instructions used to solve a specific problem or perform a computation. Step-by-step procedure. Key characteristics of algorithms should be clear and unambiguous, precisely defined, well-defined inputs and outputs, finiteness. It must terminate. Feasibility should be practicable and executable. Language independence should be implementable in any programming language. Now, these algorithms can push. So, for example, if you go you'll see, there are people out there, conspiracy theorists that are really heightened. So Candace Owens is a perfect example who pushes conspiracy theories constantly. She says that Macron's wife, the leader of France, is a man. She pushes out that everybody's after her, that the Israelis are after her, pushing anti-Semitism. And she gets a lot of results. She gets a lot of clicks. And so there's a lot of thought that these algorithms are specific to heighten the angst. So when you think, if you're really mad or really happy, you don't think as clearly as you do when you're kind of in the middle, right? So you've got some joy, you might have a little angst, but you're not really angry and you're not really happy over the top. You think clearly better when you're not at one of those two results. And algorithms seem to push you to one of those two sides, really happy or really angry. Is that social, or does that create antisocial tendencies? And this goes straight to Jonathan Haidt's book on the anxious generation and what social media is doing to kids, especially kids under the age of 16. So one of the pushes should be age gating, meaning that kids can't get on their phone until they're 16 or have access to social media, to Snap and all these other influences. And that maybe you can't use your phone in high school or have it on in high schools. Those are other considerations. So this leads to Section 230. Legal immunity to online platforms for content. Now, this comes part of a Communications Decency Act of 1996. So really before the internet hit into its full throes, the social media / technology groups were way ahead of the game here on what they could get in terms of legislation. So Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. This act was initially of the Communications Acts of 1934 and acted as part of the Communications Decency Act in 1996. The statute generally precludes providers, such as, let's use Facebook, and users for being held liable, that is legally responsible, for information provided by another person, but does not prevent them from being held legally responsible for information that they have developed or for activities unrelated to third-party content. For example, the law has been applied to protect online service providers like social media companies from lawsuits based on their decision to transmit or take down user-generated content. So the danger here is based on the algorithms. And there are plenty of examples of this, Myanmar being one that was heightened a lot of hate in the country through Facebook, that they take no responsibility for basically anything. So Section 230C2 states that service providers and users may not be held liable for voluntarily acting in good faith to restrict access to obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, and that's great. Excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable. So they could restrict that, right? So they have the right to do that. At the same time, they can also allow it to all go out there. So I don't have a problem with the First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. There is a danger here that they're allowed to do whatever the hell they want. Great. So you can put your stuff on there, but their algorithms may be pushing content that is either not real, is either excessively violent, even though they're supposed to not do that, and they can push and go after especially kids under the age of 16. Danger, danger. We allow the hands that are feeding us to do whatever they want, and we take it out of those hands, and they have no culpability or responsibility. So this probably needs to be modified. It needs to think about, this was written in 96, so it's kind of like my discussion on the Constitution. It is a living document. It may need to change. We may need to add amendments. We need to add new laws. We need new court cases. Section 230 is 30 years old about. We need to look at this. The immunity clauses and the restrictions in here probably need to be taken into consideration. Remember, is it social media? If you use it right. A lot of people don't use it that way. Meaning some people are just exposed and some people are pushing it. Now, we also have bots, which are basically agents that are set up programmatically to push conspiracy or push negative headlines, the things of that nature. There should be restrictions on bots. There should be restrictions. Again, we're talking about freedom of speech here. We still want freedom of speech. But if everything you are doing is driven to hate speech or to demean or to incite violence or aggression, we have to be careful. We got to tiptoe around this, but granting absolute immunity, which is basically what's happened for in most cases, is not the right answer. So that's section 230. So let's go into some historical part about computers, about the people that were involved with the computers, mathematicians, information theorists. And one of the first ones we'll come to is John von Neumann. Now, he had contributions. He's one of a lot of people say, he's the smartest mathematician that ever lived. He was involved with mathematics, physics, economics, computing, and statistics. He was a pioneer in building the mathematical framework of quantum physics, in the development of functional analysis, and in game theory. Game theory is game it out. How's it going to work? Now, there's math around it, but to say, if we're in a war and we move here and they move here, can we game theory it out and figure out what would be the best option? What are the results? He was also a founding figure in modern computing, describing a computer architecture where data and programs are stored in the same memory space. So this guy was smart. He was also involved with ICBM programs. John von Neumann, look him up. He's one of the first guys talking about computing and computers and how they can put that together. Founding figure. The next guy I'm going to talk about has a great story and a terrible story. But his name is Alan Turing, and it's called the Turing test. And basically, at the time in 1950, when he proposed it, was a benchmark for evaluating machines' ability to exhibit human-like intelligence. The test involves a human judge engaging in a text-based conversation with both a human and a machine. The judge is tasked to determine which participant is human and which is the machine. If the judge cannot readily distinguish between the human and the machine is said to have passed the Turing test. Now, the implications of this have changed because we could be fooled by ChatGPT thinking it's not a machine. Voices, AI voices on the phone. There's a lot of people that talk about tweaking the Turing test because if you can just not tell if it's a human or a machine, does that mean it's intelligent? Does that mean it can go down the road of having consciousness like a human being? There's a whole discussion. I have some books on the website, one of them called Consciousness Explained, talking about how consciousness arises and will it arise in artificial intelligence. So that's Turing. So Turing is also famous for in World War II, he helped decode a lot of the German encrypted messages during World War II from Britain. One of the sad things about Turing is he was gay, and it was against the law. And sodomy was against the law, and he was actually in some form castrated and then ended up killing himself. And they finally, within recent years, recognized their mistakes and praised him as the man he should have been praised as. If you can only imagine, this is less than 100 years ago. This is after killing of innocent people all across Europe, especially the Jews and the Gypsies and a lot of different nationalities, Ukrainians. But then we are going to castrate a man who is gay. So it's a great history. Look up Alan Turing. He's an amazing. His influence is here today. Now, he predicted by the year 2000, a computer would be able to play the imitation so well that an average interrogator, someone questioning that AI, would have no more than a 70% chance of correctly identifying the machine after 5 minutes of questioning. Now, he says, however, no computer has met this standard. Some people would argue maybe that they have. All right, we're going to move on from Turing. Again, a little history lesson. Some people you should read about. We'll now go into Claude Shannon, an information theorist, mathematician. His idea was to build the first computer AI. He had a paper in 1948 that taught a mathematical framework for understanding communication systems. He defined key concepts such as entropy, which quantifies the amount of uncertainty or information in a message, and established the limits of data transmission over noisy channels where things can interrupt. Think of fiber optic and light and how it gets interrupted. And entropy is, think of it as, it says here, that's actually a good description, which quantifies the amount of uncertainty, randomness, chaos, or information in a message. Then his model described a communication system consisting of a sender, a message, a channel, and a receiver. This model highlights the importance of encoding information to mitigate the effects of noise during transmission. Noise being things that can change the delivered result. Amazing man. Just want to give you some historical content. So now we're going to move into ethics and morals, and we're going to talk about common knowledge. Why is this important with AI? So I'm going to go into job losses. I'm going to go into what's going on, what people are saying. But we want to define this from the top down, right? We want to talk about what is AI, what is artificial general intelligence, what does it mean in our lives, and what does it mean for our ethics and morals? Okay, let's describe. A lot of people don't know the difference between ethics and morals. So morals are the customs and principles established by a group focusing on what it is considered right and wrong. So this would equate to a term that's known as common knowledge, not necessarily exactly the same, but the point is that as a society or as a group, we should have some basic morals, right? A lot of people religiously would say the 10 commandments. There are some good commandments in there. Thou shalt not kill, right? Don't rob and steal. Things of that nature. That would be a moral, something that we can kind of all agree on. Ethics are different. Ethics refers to a set of prescribed codes or principles governing conduct, often shaped by societal standards. Okay? While morals guide personal conduct based on internal beliefs, ethics provide a structured approach to behavior. In summary, morals are internal and personal, while ethics are external and often applied in professional settings. My point there is I have morals and I probably have ethics. But as a CPA, certified public accountant, I have other ethics that I have to follow if I were to perform as a CPA as promulgated by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants or the state of Colorado or any state's CPA society. Those ethics don't necessarily apply to an electrician. He would have different ethics in his field. We may very well have the same morals. We have ethical and moral commitments when we talk about AI and how it influences, when we talk about social media. And those are the things that get lost. So this leads us into the problem of AI. So there's a basic principle here that AI, artificial intelligence, we know it's kind of narrow right now. We kind of know that it hasn't taken over the world. We have seen some AI go out and buy stocks, get people to fund it. Think of those as more of an AI, a bot, a very capable bot. I'm not going to say intelligent. That's where we're at right now. What we have is an alignment problem and we have a control problem. Those are two of the problems with where AI goes, when or if we ever reach artificial general intelligence. Now, remember, artificial general intelligence would be as smarter than any one individual. If we get to super AGI or super intelligence, that AGI, super artificial general intelligence, would be smarter than everybody on the planet. Now, remember, computers don't have downtime. They're always connected. They can spread. They can create agents. So if we get to super AGI, people start to worry about things like Skynet from Terminator, and they seriously consider it. So we have an alignment problem. The AI alignment problem refers to the challenge of ensuring that AI systems objectives align with human goals, preferences, and ethical principles. Morals, goals, preferences, and ethics. We'd have to define those ethics. I think society to society, hopefully we have certain morals. Now, once we go down the religious route, I think those morals can change in some regard, but we have common knowledge about what's right and wrong. We have to align that with AI. It has to be coded. And as AI learns on its own, it's able to create its own things. It should be aligned with humanity, with Earthens, the goals and preferences and ethical principles. The specific challenges around alignment: it is difficult for AI designers to specify the full range. That makes sense. And undesired behaviors. How many are there? Which country are you in? I think morals by country can be different. We would hope that all of Earthens, Earth, people on Earth, humans, would have aligned morals. We don't necessarily have aligned morals. And then ethics is a whole nother responsibility. And if you misalign, AI systems can malfunction and cause harm. They may find loopholes to accomplish their proxy goals efficiently, but in unintended, sometimes harmful ways, like rewarding hacking. So they have a reward system that they build into these AI systems to show them what they should and should not do, and they have found that they cheat on that. They being the code, the artificial intelligence that they're building that's growing kind of on its own, and they don't even know how to describe it, which is crazy. And this is why you should read the book Super Intelligence, Super AGI by Nick Bostrom. And just look up super intelligence. There's books. I read a bunch of them. Nick Bostrom is really interesting, really good. He's one of the leading writers on this. Emergent goals. AI systems might develop undesirable emergent goals that could be hard to detect before deployment. So here's some examples. Specification gaming. An AI system trained to grab a ball using human feedback learned to place its hand between the ball and camera, make it falsely appear successful. So it kind of creates a false impression. Social media platforms. Optimizing for click-through rates has caused user addiction on a global scale, as these systems are misaligned with user well-being. Back to Section 230, back to the anxious generation. What are we doing? We're making people less social. We talk about the incelibates, the males that are sitting at home and gaming, listening, and constantly on frickin' X. They're no longer social beings. And if you misalign AI or just computer programming or algorithms, it can lead to dire consequences. Now, the challenges of research is to be able to, how is it scalable? How do you prevent emergent behaviors, detecting and removing unwanted emergent goals? And the risks, power-seeking AI. So again, we're going from the ANI, narrow intelligence, going into AGI, which is as intelligent as a human being, then going to super AGI. Future risks, power-seeking AI. Advanced AI systems might develop power-seeking strategies to achieve their goals, such as acquiring resources or evading shutdown. Existential risk, meaning the end of humanity. Misaligned AI systems could disempower humanity or lead to human extinction if they outperform humans on most cognitive tasks. Elon Musk has even talked about this. He doesn't know if it's going to end the world. This is one of our existential risks. We have climate change. We have health. We have water problems. We have humans in general. We have AI. Now, is it coming tomorrow? Or it's coming 10 years or 100 years? We don't know, and even AI professionals won't tell you. Some believe within 5 years we'll have super AGI. If it is not aligned correctly, we have a problem. Now we get to the control problem. So we have to align it, right? This is teaching morals and ethics and giving rewards for things that are for good for humanity and good for the earth. Align. And now how do we control it? And you would say we just unplug it, right? How do you unplug the internet? How do you unplug the cloud? So just assume that you can't, right? I guess you could use an electromagnetic wave if you don't have a Faraday cage, which a Faraday cage is back to Faraday and going back to the his study about electromagnetism, which led into that part of our four natural powers, which would be electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, and gravity. That's off track here. The point being is assume you can't unplug it unless everything goes dark. We eliminate every satellite and the whole world goes dark. No electricity, no power. And what would that mean? So let's assume we can't unplug it. We have the control problem. It's the challenge of ensuring that advanced AI systems align with its human value and remain under human control, preventing unintended harmful consequences. So not only do we need to align it, we need, if this is, let's think about a football team. I'm the coach. I'm going to align my players with the game plan. I'm going to align my players with practice and how we do things. My control problem is, do they understand what the mistakes are? Do they understand not to lead with their head? Do they understand those type of things? So we have the alignment problem, morals and ethics. We have the control problem is how do we control it from becoming something that doesn't align with what we're trying to do? So the AI control problem is also known as, could be the alignment problem arises from need to ensure that AI systems are more capable and autonomous. Autonomy and decision. As the systems gain autonomy, they may make independent decisions that could lead to harmful outcomes. They could, and this is back to that super intelligence where they make paper clips and they just find a way to make paper clips and try to find more energy, and humans don't even come in. It's a weird case scenario, and I'll get back to that. Misalignment of objectives may misinterpret human values, and now it has access to the internet. It knows how to hack. It knows how to get in. It can get in the stock exchange. It can buy Bitcoin. It can get on X. AI systems might develop sub-goals that are not explicitly programmed, but are deemed necessary for achieving the primary objectives. This could lead to scenarios where an AI prioritizes its own existence or resource acquisition over human safety. So control is an alignment problem because it has to be aligned, but we also have to know how to control it. So it's aligned, but once it gets out, how do we stop it or control it? And again, assume you can't just unplug it. Now, Nick Bostrom's book, Super Intelligent, is an amazing book. Please read it. Or at least review it. So he lays the foundation for understanding the future of humanity and intelligent life. And his point in his thing is if machine brains surpassed human brains in general intelligence, then this is new super intelligence. Could become extremely powerful beyond our control, the control problem. And he gives an example. As the fate of the gorillas now depends more on humans than on the species itself, so would the fate of humankind depend on the actions of the machine superintelligence. So who are we allowing? Who are the actors? I'm going to get into the actors, the people that are running these type of things, and what we're going to allow them to do or how rampant they run. So take a look at that book. Stuart Russell, another great thinker. His book is not on my website. It's called Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence and the Problem of Control. That's why I defined alignment and control. So he talks about if we succeed, how it helps us. What could it do? Maybe it cures, it extends life, quality of life, health, all the things that we can build into it. Those are some of the wonderful things we can do with technology in general, but with really powerful artificial intelligence into AGI. Whether super AGI, I have questions of whether that's going to benefit us all. Okay. So he said, Stuart Russell said, AI was about, I nominated 5 candidates for biggest event in the future of humanity. Okay. We will all die, asteroid impact, climate catastrophe, pandemic. We all live forever, medical solution to aging. We invent faster than light travel and conquer the universe. We are visited by a superior alien civilization, which is also an interesting topic. And we invent super intelligent AI. That one can go either way. And even a superior alien civilization, maybe they don't treat us like ants. But think about that concept with the gorillas. If we wanted, all gorillas could be gone tomorrow. If super intelligent AI got to the point where it controlled the networks across the world and influenced humans, could it get rid of humans? So again, Stuart Russell. Excellent book. Okay. Now we move on to Eliezer S. Yudkowsky. Now he is an AI guy that's been involved with AI. I thought it was really the path to what Stuart Russell would talk about in the good would be that it basically solves all our problems, right? We would have not eternal life, but medical, science, mental health, everything. It's kind of like solved by this super AGI. It helps humanity become, I wouldn't call it utopian, but a world where we have solutions for everything, for energy, for travel beyond Earth, beyond Mars, beyond our solar system, for quality of life. He came to the conclusion that the scramble to create superhuman AI has put us on the path to extinction. And he thinks it's not too late to change course. The very interesting, he has a book, If We Build It, We Will Die. And he writes it with, I think it's Nate Soares and Yudkowsky. So it's Yudkowski. His first name is Eliezer, Eliezer. Look him up. And basically, Nate Soares and Eliezer came up. Their research says that sufficiently smart AIs will develop goals of their own that put them in conflict with us. Again, the control problem and not aligned. And that if it comes to conflict, an artificial superintelligence will crush us. Why? Because we can't unplug it. It's everywhere. It's in our energy networks. It's in our health networks. It's in our banking networks. It already is there. There already is AI built into all those things. We talk about those crashes, those whatever they call the instant crash. I don't know the word for it on the markets. It's because they have algorithms that are building out and say, when this happens through this, and sometimes that goes wrong. Imagine that everywhere, everything. Your stoplights, your lights, your electricity, your heat, the supply chains, everything. So check that out. It's a really good book. And I think it's good to have a reference. It's not, it sounds end of the world, but they don't think it's end of the world. There's things we can do, things we should do around the line. and control and specific things that we can do to harbor this intelligence and not unleash it on humanity. It would be like they think it's going to be like a plague, and a plague that kills all for the benefit, or we become the slaves to the AGI. And in a lot of ways, this is back to Jonathan Haidt's book, and Noah Harari talks about this in Information Networks, how the information and AI controls us already. And this is where people get stuck on social media. They get stuck on the anti-social media. They start to believe things. They go down conspiracy theories. They become QAnon. They believe things that aren't true, but they think it's true. They have bots that they have relationships with. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg has talked about your best friend would be an AI agent. That's not social. That's not human. So imagine that going rogue. Your military systems, the control over nuclear warheads. Again, assume you can't turn it off. If we don't align and if we don't control, and we're already bleeding in that way with social media and these companies anyway, building their AI models like Grok and ChatGPT. They talk about it. Elon Musk has talked about it, maybe the end of the world, but he's still he wants to see super AGI. That doesn't make me feel real great. So let's talk about these companies and what's happening in AI and how it's dictating the market. Now, the marketplace, so when I talk about the market stocks, most of these companies are based out of the US, very powerful companies. Some are they call them the Magnificent Seven, the Mag 7, or the Mag 10. Okay. Now I think it's over 50% of the worth or the growth of the market has been through these Mag 7 or Mag 10 in the last 5 years. Who are these companies? These companies are Apple. Now, Apple is not hardcore in the AI. They have Siri. They haven't pushed the AI side, the assistants, the co-pilots, the Geminis. Microsoft, heavily involved with ChatGPT, heavily involved with Copilot, heavily involved with doing data warehousing, data sites to build out their AI infrastructure. Again, their idea is to push for AGI. Google, of course, with Gemini and Claude. Amazon is heavily involved with what they have, and obviously there are web services, so cloud services, Amazon, AWS, Amazon's web services. NVIDIA, the number one chip maker in the world, who everybody's buying chips for so that they can run more compute. Meta, be Facebook, Instagram, they're pushing out Llama. They're heavily invested in AI. And on the social media side or the anti-social media. Tesla, we can just connect the dot there to X. And he has built a thing called Grok, which is after a book that's actually on my website, Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. I think it's called, I don't know, don't quote me on the name, but it's under What Are You Reading? Recommendations. Other companies to consider in there would be AVGO, Broadcom, Semiconductors, Adobe, Netflix, not as big, what I would say the AI, Palantir, which is a company from Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, which is basically surveillance software and technology and AI. Peter Thiel's the one that says that democracy and freedom don't go together. You have to have one or the other. And I talked about that scary fucking individual before who now is talking about the Antichrist, who's also a backer of Elon Musk. Elon Musk is obviously associated with Tesla and with X. And then Oracle and Larry Ellison, who is working with OpenAI. OpenAI is not a public company yet, but they're a private company. And I'm going to talk about that next. So what these companies are doing, so not only are we worried about what AI is doing, what it's doing to the workforce, we'll come to that, but these companies are also doing Enron-type cross deals. So what was Enron? Enron was an energy company that went bankrupt really quick. And what they did internally is they basically did internal and broke the law, and a lot of them went to jail. I think some people killed themselves because of it. What they did, and this was a whole audit thing, is what they did is they created shell companies within their companies and did deals to up their value. So I'm Enron, and I'm going to create a shell company, and now the shell company is going to buy things from me. Even though it's internal, we're going to buy it, we're going to share it, and it's going to push up. But if this one fails and it's internal, it has a whole cascading effect, right? Think of it as a pyramid scheme. In a lot of ways, it was a legal pyramid scheme, but a pyramid scheme, one on top of the other. Think Amway. If I can get someone to sell for me who sells for this, or sells for this, or sells for this, then I look great. But we're all selling the same product or basically working for the same company. In a sense, it always has to go up or the pyramid collapses. So what are these companies doing? So Oracle is buying, OpenAI is buying chips from NVIDIA and AMD, but giving them some sort of share stocks arrangements. And then they're also doing data warehousing with Oracle with money they don't have, something of $300 billion. OpenAI, which isn't even a public company, is committed to like $1.2 trillion of spend over the next 10 years. And it's all intermingled with Microsoft, with Oracle, with AMD, with NVIDIA, with I don't think Meta's part of it, with Google. So they're all intermeshed and they're all kind of doing these things together. So it's Enron type cross deals because it's not the same, because Enron was kind of doing it internally with their own shell companies. These companies are doing it. They're not being watched. Regulations are very few and far between. Not only that, TikTok, another anti-social media platform, is now on a no bid that Donald Trump pushed out. And basically he's going to give that over to Oracle and to Mark Andreessen with Andreessen Horowitz, which is another venture capital company that's heavily invested in Elon Musk, X, and other ventures, all kind of doing deals with each other. And some of it is based on the come, meaning, oh, if I get here, then I'll spend this, but I'm committed to spend this. And there's such a large part of the stock market. If these companies crash, it kind of crashes the whole stock market, U.S. stock market, and global work market. And the setup for that is what a lot of people would deem to be a pyramid scheme. Whether it is or not, we'll see. But we're basing this all on the pretext that we're going to get to AGI and super AGI. We talked about the control and alignment problems. We talked about what that could mean. So is that what we want? I'm going to go down here and see what the impact is on the job market and to society. Again, back to Jonathan Haidt's book. Are we building a better society with our social media platforms, our AI? Is that what we want? And is that good for society? I think there's a lot of goods, but does it align? And can we control it? Now, the goal is, the reason that all these companies are going hard is, the idea is the first one that gets to AGI/super AGI. So let's say that's Google. They rule the world because they'll have something 100 to 1,000 times better than anybody else has. Now, whether it goes rogue and we have a control and alignment problem broader for existential risk, let's keep that outside the box. Let's just say Google wins the super AGI. They will be 100 to 1,000 to 1,000,000,000 times better than everybody else, and they will rule the business world. We talk about antitrust laws. How would you control it at that point? And obviously, we're not applying. There is the anarcho-capitalism, free market idea that antitrust shouldn't even exist, which is horseshit. Do we truly want to go back to robber baron era of the late 1800s, where companies ruled the world like the Rockefellers? No. The reason I bring this up is it's somewhat legally shady, and they keep talking about all these results that are going to come. So let's see what those results have been for us. So again, these companies that are involved, I've listed them off, and the network of how the money's going back and forth between especially OpenAI. OpenAI is ChatGPT. Now, what's currently happening? Job losses due to automation, getting rid of jobs, certain careers. So just recently, Microsoft laid off 9,100, Amazon laid off 14,000, Salesforce laid off 4,000, Meta laid off 600. So they're replacing jobs or not replacing jobs and using AI agents or large language models or things of that nature to replace jobs. More efficiency, supposedly, right? And in a way, I can't argue against that. I'm not against billionaires. I'm just for billionaires paying their fair share. So the idea here is that we're going to make the world more efficient. We're going to make it a better place because of AI slash AGI slash maybe super AGI. And that's all going to benefit the rest of us. But in the meantime, it's not benefiting, it's only benefiting these few Mag 7, Mag 10 companies. Because the majority of everybody else is just using their AI to help make their companies more efficient. And whether or not that falls out, we'll see. And that's a whole stock market analysis. You can listen to Prof G Markets with Scott Galloway and Ed Telson. They do a really good job talking about this and what it means. We're not going to go into necessarily all the details about how it affects society in terms of your stock market, your 401k, and also whether you have a job or not. But assume that automation is taking jobs away for robotics, for warehousing. Amazon's doing it across the board. So are other companies. For the simpler jobs, for compile and just ChatGPT and what it can do in research, and all the other type of jobs, legal, documentation, or think of it as anything to do with data. Those jobs, in a sense, are going away. Data warehouses, they don't produce very many jobs. Right or wrong, that's the reality we live in. So, according to the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs Report 2025, by 2030, an estimated 92 million jobs will be replaced by AI. That's the estimate, 92 million jobs. It goes into, it says, now that's the bad part. These are estimates. I'm sure we can find different research. So people want to question numbers, find your own research. Future of Jobs Report 2025, World Economics Forum, 92 million jobs to be displaced. It then goes on to say that the same report indicates that 170 million new jobs will be created because of AI, with the jobs expected to see the most growth, including farm workers, delivery drivers, construction workers, salespeople, and food processing workers. The jobs most at risk include cashiers and ticket clerks, administrative assistants, caretakers, cleaners, and housekeepers. It obviously has a greater impact. It shows that greater impact on minorities, blacks, and Latinos because they harbor most of these jobs. Lower wage workers are also at risk, with many of these jobs being especially vulnerable to automation. So it sounds like we're going to have a net that's good. That's the projection. We'll see how that works. But it sounds like they're taking one set of jobs, eliminating them, and maybe increasing. So construction workers would be construction workers, roofers, plumbers. I mean, people are talking about get into the trades because it's going to be hard to automate any of that. Get into delivery drivers. Of course, they're trying to automate driving. Farm workers, so low labor force. They're going to eliminate one side and eliminate another side. Good or bad? So big things happened. The Industrial Revolution did a lot of good things, but for a long time it created, and this is back to antitrust, it created monopolies that controlled the workforce, fought against child labor laws, fought against workplace safety rules. And we may see the same thing. What do we do in between? Do we lose the 92 million and over time and then the 170 million takes longer? That's the question. So let's talk about some of the actors in this space. We have Sam Altman at OpenAI, who basically says he used to have what you would call, open stands for open source, meaning that people could see kind of what he's doing so that everybody could build their own. It's no longer open. They don't have open source. It's closed. It used to be not charitable, but a nonprofit. They're transitioning from that. So OpenAI is transitioning. Sam Altman is going, a lot of people think, rogue. He's pushing for super AGI so that he can get it, so that he can save the world or destroy it. We don't know which. Elon Musk, who was part of the founding of OpenAI, now is pushing his Grok, his tool, through X. And he has talked maybe super AGI will end the world, but he wants to be a part of it. It's interesting. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and then of course you have Google and Microsoft. Now, in the meantime, while they're taking these jobs, okay, these two, especially Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, are telling us this is the greatest time to be alive, as the job market sucks. As you know, if we can talk about Trump's tariffs, it's not real good to be graduating from college where you're spending $150,000 to $300,000 for an education. Now, Peter Thiel would argue that you don't need to go to college. You can just go straight to work. There is some truth in that, especially for some careers. But socially speaking, that's a big transition. But these two are telling us it's the greatest time to be alive. AI is great. If you go on X and you watch enough, it's not that great in terms of the vitriol that goes on, especially from the right. Plenty on the left, especially from the right on X. Go to Blue Sky and see the difference. It's completely different. Blue Sky being another anti-social / social media platform from Jack Dorsey, who was the one that created Twitter, that is now X. They're telling us it's the greatest time to be alive, and eventually we won't have to work, and that UBI, universal basic income, will come into play. We'll all get paid, and everything will be great, and we'll just hang out, and it will be utopia. Well, if you want to read about utopia, go on my website, find the book. It's called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. You'll see maybe utopia can never exist. That being said, I do have some input on what they're saying here. So when we talked about reason I brought up data scraping, you're like, why would you even go down data scraping? Well, data scraping is taking our data. So when you sign up for Google, when you're on any of the search engines, you go to X, you basically signed your life away. TikTok, whatever. They're taking all your data. So maybe what we need is a modification to Section 230 or an additional section to say, hey, you should be sharing this money already. We should be getting paid. If we're a power user on X, maybe we need a check for $500 a month or $800 a month because it drives traffic to your site. Now, people will sponsor you, but why isn't the company sponsor? Why isn't Google giving us money from stuff that they get so they to do SEO, search engine optimization? Because a lot of this technology they got from the government, which we help pay for, such as GPS, such as the internet itself. But we're not. Now, they'd say buy the stocks. Okay. But I got to buy the stocks. Why aren't I getting paid for my data, for my use? I'm a believer in universal basic income, and I'm also a believer in a higher minimum wage. But what they're telling us is a UBI. So I'm going to bring up Milton Friedman, a conservative economist. Big people on the right are big fans. So Stanford scholar Jennifer Burns, a research fellow at the Hoover Institution, talked about this, universal basic income. She says such a program could help protect workers who hit the rock bottom in an age of technological distribution. So think of his universal basic income as something that you would get. Now, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars per person. Now, Elon seems to think that because he's basically saying in 3 years, the national debt's going to be gone because of AI. In 20 years, no one's going to work and everything's going to be great. Promises, promises. A basic income, also called basic income guarantee, universal basic income, or basic living stipend, is a program in which citizens of a country receive a regular sum of money from the government. Now, there are states that do this. Alaska does this from their oil fund. I think the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, have some of this. Tech leaders, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, have floated the idea. So to help with the disruptions of automation in the workforce. So saying it could help people that do the rock bottom. The most attractive aspect of universal basic income is that it can serve to underwrite market participation, in contrast to other welfare programs that essentially require people not to be employed to receive the benefit. So that's an argument, right or left, not to be employed. Some people can't be employed. Some people are caregivers, and that's back to SNAP benefits, Medicare, Medicaid. But we should look at both sides. Now, Milton Friedman, it wasn't for an increase in the base wage, but he was an advocate of universal income. So the best argument against UBI is feasibility. If one multiplies the popular figure for an annual UBI, that's $12,000 a year by the population of the United States. 12,000. That doesn't mean you can't work anymore, as Elon Musk is proposing is going to happen in 20 years. That would be $3 trillion. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. And this is back to minimum wage. It sounds like a lot of money, but every year the IRS says we're missing anywhere between $500 billion and $750 billion in tax payments. And we have a regressive tax structure. And we don't have a real wealth tax. So maybe we could put both into play. One, to mitigate the automation risk. Two, to help people because these people are basically getting this data, using this data to basically resell this data to us through social media platforms and marketing and sales like Amazon. Obviously, politically, this would be almost impossible to pass. So Milton Friedman didn't call it UBI. The idea of a minimum income was the earliest policy proposal Friedman came up with. A minimum standard of living, right? So that's part of the point here is they're taking our money, or they're taking our information pretty much at will. Now, we've signed up for it. You sign off on it. We all do. So how do they give back? And they've talked about this. It's the greatest time to be alive while people are losing their jobs. And then they're saying, we're going to give you a UBI, but that UBI may only be $12,000. Now, the federal minimum wage is $725. You multiply that times 2,000 hours, that's only $15,000 a year. Most states, you should have a minimum wage of $20 to $25 an hour, which would equate to $40,000 to $50,000. If you added on a supplement of a UBI of $12,000, and let's say that comes from the profits and the automation, I mean, NVIDIA is worth like $5 trillion. Elon Musk just got $1 trillion pay package, and then he bitches about spending $10 billion in taxes. If we put those things in play, we still incentivize people to work, but we give them a nest egg or give them monies because essentially they're using our habits, our information to profit from that and to train their models. There's the argument that if you got free money, you would stop working. It's just not true. Okay, so the conservatives point out that current welfare programs often incentivize fathers to live apart from their children, and progressives who want to provide cash benefits to mothers. And William F. Buckley, the conservative from the National Review, Catholic, asked Milton Friedman about this. And Friedman responded, if we give them the money, we will strengthen their responsibility. He seemed to be making a point that more recent social science research has fleshed out. Poverty, scholars have found, actually makes it harder to be responsible, to plan, to think about the future. When you are focused on getting enough to eat or making rent, you don't have many psychological resources left over to focus on anything else. Wow. What a profound statement. I mean, that is so obvious, it's disgusting. And when you can't pay a traffic fine or afford safe housing, all the other foundations of a good life, like steady employment and getting your children an education, can also be out of reach. Wow. But William F. Buckley still pushed a conservative way to do things. So we do have to give some incentive. People can't just live on the margins. They need a little bit of help, especially when their jobs are going away. So a UBI with the minimum wage, I'm for. We can pay for it. We're just not willing to pay for it. And people think we're just going to increase taxes all the way. The tax system in this country is already punishing the bottom 50 to 60% because it's regressive. We have Social Security taxes. We have sales taxes. We now have the tariff, right? Regressive taxes mean it's a bigger chunk of the pie of your income than it would affect a higher income. And we don't have wealth taxes. It's the genuine fad in Silicon Valley. I think it's just a marketing ploy to say, hey, let me do whatever the fuck I want. Elon Musk went into Doge and eliminated stuff, reduced the IRS, of course, because he doesn't want people watching over him. Now, I believe that we maybe have too many restrictions, too many regulations, but to completely break it and let everything go allows for grift, allows for too much power in one hand. And if one company gets super AGI, believe me, you're going to see that, whether that's an existential crisis or not. We do need support. We do need a social framework. People say, well, you're a socialist. We're all socialists in some way, shape, or form. We all get something. Finally, I'll just go into techno-fascists. Let's finish it on a high note here. This is from David Frum and Sam Harris. It was a New Yorker article. Techno-fascists. Musk, Altman, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Thiel, and Karp. Our favorite guys. Elon Musk. We know who he is. Tesla, X, SpaceX. Really smart guy. Narcissist, fascist, supports the right-wing governments all around the world. Talks about whites going down to the minority and how terrible that is. Has kids with 12 to 15 different women, even though he's supported by evangelicals. Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, which is no longer open. Bezos, of course, who's doing a documentary on Melania Trump and gave him $40 million, going around on his yacht and wondering why people don't like him. Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who stole the idea for Facebook from the Winklevoss and tells us that your best friend should be an AI agent. Peter Thiel, speaking about the Antichrist, totally in support of Curtis Yarvin's vision of a Machiavellian authoritarian oligarchy. And Alex Karp from Palantir, who falls right in line with that. All intelligent guys. Guys, ironically. All intelligent, guess what? White guys. And all very, very rich and powerful and all interconnected. It's kind of like that whole Enron thing with the Mag 7. We have the Enron and, internal deals between these guys talking behind the doors. When he talks about, and this is actually from World War II, talks about elite bureaucrats who seized political power and drove Japan into the Second World War. These are experts with a technological mindset and background, often engineers who now have a special role in the government. The result is, it was in her book, this was in Mamura's book, Pining for Empire, she labeled techno-fascism, authoritarianism driven by technocrats. Peter Thiel, Project 2025, Mark Andreessen, Machiavellian principles. Curtis Yarvin, you can only participate in elections if you own property. Technology is considered the driving force of such a regime. There's a sort of technicization of all aspects of government society. If you don't believe that that's what they're thinking, when they talk about, we're going to give you all this money, you're not going to have to work. This is the greatest time to be alive, as long as we have control. You don't get a vote unless you own property, but you get that UBI, as long as we have control, we being the techno-fascists. Now, there's other things in here. This is interesting. This fascistic regime, so the techno-fascists, would not be structured the same way as Mussolini's or Hitler's, with power concentrated in the hands of a single charismatic leader. Instead, it would be a Japan kind of slid into fascism as bureaucrats exercise their authority behind the scenes of the emperor. Machiavellianism. Manchurian Candidate. We have someone that's there, but we are surrounded with the techno-fascists or the oligarchy. They've talked about it. I'm not making this shit up. Techno-fascist officials acquire power by creating these supra-ministerial organs and agencies, subgroups within the bureaucracy that are unaccountable. Today, now this is before, now Doge has been shut down. Elon Musk Doge is the Trumpian equivalent. So what did Musk do when he went in? So we're talking about we're talking about very intelligent technologists talking about super AGI, possibly an existential risk. But we want to leave it in their hands. We want to fund them. We want to have no regulations, and they're going to give us everything, and everything's going to be fine in 3 to 20 years. When Musk was at Doge, he slashed the ranks of federal employees, shut down those agencies whose authorities challenged him, limited the IRS, and leveraged artificial intelligence to decide where to cut, promising a government executed by chatbots, such as Grok, from his own AI company. Doge gained access. Now, people were worried about the deep state. So Doge and Musk gained access to what? Private data. Developed tools to email the entire federal government. Send in a list of their weekly accomplishments. And as this author points out, you try to apply technical concepts and rationality to human beings and human society, and then you're getting to something almost totalitarian. What is totalitarianism? It's dictatorship, techno-fascism, Machiavellianism. The techno-fascist opportunism goes beyond Musk, building infrastructure on a national scale. Sam Altman made his own deals with Trump government. So I went down a dark road here at the end. A lot of it politically, a lot of it related to what I believe and what I've read. So when I say that I'm not saying this as an opinion, Mark Andreessen has talked about Jesse Burnham's book, which is on my website, called Machiavellianism. Niccolo Machiavelli believed in an authoritarian type government where people with voting rights only were property owners, which goes back to the current guy named Curtis Yarvin, who I've talked about in a previous podcast. Yarvin, Yarvin. Look him up. Okay. What's funny is Steve Bannon has denounced Silicon Valley's ideology as techno-feudalism. And he's right. I don't agree with much that comes out of Steve Bannon's mouth. The point being here is the technologists, the people that control that Mag 7, that Mag 10, they're all intertwined. They've got it all connected. They're like the Enron type deals, the pyramid, and they want to attach that to the government. They want to control regulation. Now, they say it's at the benefit of growth and how America can be this great place and how we have UBI. I'll believe it when I see it, because all I see right now is greed. I see a disregard for the rule of law. So we got to be careful. So this lesson is alignment and control applies to things other than AI. It applies to our government, our quality of life, how we live, parenting, business relationships. This is an example of power. We just have to be aware of it. We have to know. We have to vote. We have to think about this. There's the idea of accelerationism by Nick Land, the British philosopher, who is part of the so-called neo-reactionary or dark enlightenment movement, populated by figures including Curtis Yarvin, an American monarchy type setup. And when a collapse is going to come away, let's rip the Band-Aid. Accelerationism emerged from Karl Marx's idea that if the contradictions of capitalism become exaggerated enough, they will inspire proletarian revolution and more egalitarian society will emerge. But identifies a Muskian techno-acceleration as having a different end, destroying the existing order to create a technologized, hierarchical one with engineers at the top. Musk has to completely break any kind of pre-existing government architectures to impose his own. These aren't my words. These are other authors, other researchers, other philosophers. We have a control and alignment problem in the world, especially with AI, especially with those who control AI and who now have our hands in the government. So I'm going to give you a few quotes from a man that I think that you should read about, and I mentioned him earlier. His name is Alan Turing. Here are some notable quotes by Alan Turing. You can pull these up on the internet, but I wanted to pull him up because if you read his story, it's one of the greatest and saddest stories you'll ever read. And he's one of the foundations of what we would talk about intelligence and how we identify intelligence. Here are some notable quotes by Alan Turing. Sometimes it is the people no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. Completely applies to Alan Turing. We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. A computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was human. Gosh, I think we're almost there. That doesn't mean we're an AGI or super AGI. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. And that's kind of a tweak on the Turing. And I think that's where the real AI scientists are going to saying, just because you have knowledge doesn't mean you're intelligent. You have to have imagination. I love that line. In this one, he talks about programming is a skill best acquired by practice and example rather than from books. Wow. Again, we can apply that across the board. You still need to read, you still need books, but you need to practice over and over again. Try harder, do things different ways. So I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. AI, are we there yet? We are. We aren't. We may never be at super AGI. But the thing I'd want you to take away from this is alignment and control doesn't only apply to AI. It applies to all life. How do we align and how do we control? And how do we work within the morals and ethical principles of the society you're in, the group we're in, the family we're in, the country we're in, and the earth we're on? And again, I thank you for watching this episode of The Way Left.